Welcome, everybody, to our class on dream visitations and the possibility of initiating this kind of contact with your loved ones who have left the physical world. I actually remember that my very first dream visitation I had was when I was about 14 years old. And my little dog was the first animal that I'd ever saved up my money and bought a puppy. I had her for several years, but she unexpectedly passed away. And that was kind of my first real grief experience too, as a kid. And within a week of her passing, she popped up for me in a dream very briefly. And I remember being so excited about it. I didn't have any context for that being a visitation at the time. But now, with all of the experiences I've had since then, I recognize that even our pets can show up in dream visitations. And so I want you to know that if our pets can do it, that your human loved ones who are now on the other side of the veil can also do the same. So I am going to share my screen. Okay, so dream visits and initiating contact with your loved ones. The very first thing that I want to talk about is some of the science behind what happens with the brain during the sleep cycle. And I first taught this class a couple of years ago. And just in the last couple of weeks, wouldn't you know, they've discovered some new things. And so hopefully I'll be able to relate this new information to you in a logical way. But it's helpful if we understand that the brain is just a receiver of consciousness. It's not the producer of it. And so when we are looking at states of the brain, it's really about the vibrational states that it gets to as it receives different forms of consciousness, different layers of consciousness. And it's really good to understand a little bit about this. It's not super important that you are a brain scientist in order to have brain visitations, but having a little bit of understanding of the cycles that we go through at night helps you if you're looking to achieve those brain states in order to up the chance that you could have a dream visitation. So during our normal waking state, we're generally in beta. Right now, with me talking to all of you, I'm in beta state. It's where we're problem solving and engaging and talking and thinking and just doing our normal daily activities. When we're sleeping, we get into a lot of these other brain states. And let me clarify, we kind of have all of the brain states at all of the time. We've always got a little gamma, a little beta, a little alpha, but what we're looking at is which ones are dominant. And so at different stages of our sleep cycles every night, different brain wave states become dominant. The first one that we drop into is what's called non-REM alpha. And in that stage, we're just getting really good and relaxed and just beginning to shift into the first stages of sleep. And it's kind of at the late stage alpha. I could be not completely accurate on this because, again, the science is not always super aware yet of when these happen. But it seems to me that it's late stage alpha just before we go into what's called non-REM theta that we hit that hypnagogic or hypnopompic state that's coming in and out of sleep. It's that fuzzy, almost aware, not quite aware state where interesting things can occur. I get a lot of mediumship information in that state. And so I end up having conversations with folks in that hypnagogic state. that turns out later to be meaningful. Usually it means I'm about to run into somebody's loved one the next day or two. After alpha, we slip into what's called non-REM theta. They used to think that dreams did not occur in this state. But a couple of years ago, when I first did this class, they suddenly discovered, oh, dreams do occur in this state, because they could wake people up during this early non-REM theta. And REM is basically rapid eye movement, when your eyes are moving around in your sleep. It doesn't happen, that eye movement doesn't occur in this stage 2 state. But they found out that if they wake you up in that stage, that you can recall dreams. So they know that people do dream there. And it also has these spikes of energy that seem to occur at the backside of the brain. So when it talks about sleep spindles, it's kind of this big activity that starts happening at the back of your brain. Then from that one, you slip into what's called a non-REM delta. And that's the stage that you're at where you're not dreaming. Your body is pretty much in deep, dreamless sleep. Your body is healing itself and recuperating from the day or from illness, that kind of thing. And then after that, we get into the area where they've known for a long time that you're dreaming, and that's the REM state. And REM state is another theta state of sleep. So you go through that cycle 3 or 4 times a night. And usually that REM state, as well as the non-REM theta state that you get into, they get longer as the night goes on. And so the further you get into the night, the more opportunity you have for dreams. I have noticed that I tend to remember my early morning dreams better than I do the ones that I have late at night, or when I'm first beginning my sleep cycles. So that's just a little bit of information about the states that our brain gets into as we sleep. So what we're here to talk about is not the science so much, although we'll talk more about it here in a minute, but really, what is a dream visitation, and what are the conditions around a dream visitation that help us to understand how it's different from a normal dream? The first thing that I tell people when they say, I think I might have had a dream visit, as I say, if you think you did, then yeah, you probably did, because they're real. They are real communication. They are real opportunities for our loved ones to connect with us and to communicate with us. Often they happen spontaneously without any planning or effort on our part. They just happen suddenly, and we can't necessarily plan for it per se. These dream visits are vivid to the point that we remember them really for the rest of our lives. And you can remember even down to all of the details. They tend to be very message focused, especially if there seems to be some urgency on the part of your loved one to let you know something. And I'll go ahead and share my example with my own son. A lot of you know that my son passed away at 17 years old in 2012. He transitioned by suicide. And I didn't see it coming. I had no idea that he was thinking about anything of the sort. And my grief was profound. My guilt at not seeing it coming and not being able to have done anything to prevent it was profound. And within just a few days after his passing, I finally was able to get a little bit of sleep, because I didn't sleep for days, but I was finally able to get a little bit of sleep. And I suddenly became aware that my son, Todd, was standing in front of me. And the only information I got from him was that I could not have prevented his death. And that was it. He was gone. It was over. And it had this really strange, flat, like lack of emotion. There was no affect, there was no emotion. He came in, he said what he said, and he was gone. The very next day, my older sister, Deborah, came to visit me, and she said, I need to tell you about a dream Annabelle had. Annabelle is my niece. She said a couple of nights ago, she had a dream about Todd. And she said, he came and he said, you couldn't have prevented my death. And she said, the weird thing about it was that there was no emotion. And I was so astonished that my sister just related to me my own dream that her daughter had had the night before I had had that dream. And all I could say was, that's really interesting. I could not bring myself to even tell her that I had had that exact identical dream afterwards, after Annabelle had had it. But it was such an important validation for me in my journey, because it was the first inkling that I had that there was more to this than it being just a dream. And the other thing that was really interesting about it is that it was telepathic in nature. His lips didn't move, but the message was very clear, very plain. And that is typical of a lot of dream visitations, is that all of the communication is telepathic. And a little bit of a note about it often being very emotionally specific. And I don't know if at the time, because of my deep grief and perhaps even whatever my son was experiencing at the time, if the neutrality of the emotion was important. I kind of suspect that it was, because my niece had the exact same sense of neutrality, but it hasn't always been that way. Visitations I have had from him since then, and I've had several, the love was the dominant experience, just deep, deep love on my part for him, and the love that I also felt coming from him. They are notoriously also brief. I wish that wasn't the case. I always wish they were longer. When it was neutral, it was brief. And when there has been emotion attached, it's been very, very brief. And then for me, this is one of the best examples of evidence that we have of the eternal bonds of love that we have with our loved ones who have crossed the veil. So those are the things we can kind of look at and see, does it check any of these boxes? And it may not check all of them. You might even have a visitation that is more symbolic in nature, but we'll get to that in just a minute. The next thing I wanted to talk about is lucid dreaming. And there's some brand new information out about lucid dreaming that the science community is just figuring out. I was talking with Gary about this before the class, and it's like, we could have told him this, but science is now beginning to understand that lucid dreaming is a completely different state of consciousness than even other forms of dreaming. And I would say that dream visitations are a form of lucid dreaming. But lucid dreaming can be even more than visitations. But primarily, it's a conscious awareness of being in the dream state. So with the visitations that I have had, I did know that I was dreaming. I mean, I knew that my body was asleep, and yet I was having this vivid, vivid experience. So I knew that I was dreaming, but I was as conscious as I am right now, as far as the reality of it and how real it felt to me. The other thing about lucid dreaming is that once you're aware that you're dreaming, you can begin to control the content of your dream. And I have played with practicing things to get into lucid dreaming states in the past. It's not something I've been doing a lot lately. But when I have, and I've become aware in the dream, one of the things you can do is you can say, okay, I'm pretty sure I'm in a dream. And then do something like move into another room or into another space with a plan to come back and say, when I come back, this is going to be different. If I'm dreaming, this is going to change. And holy cow, if that doesn't work, you can, and I have had it happen. I became lucid once in a dream where I was walking into what seemed like a public restroom, like in a museum. And I'm like, I think I'm lucid in a dream. Okay, how am I going to test this? I'm going to walk into this stall. When I come back out, that mirror is going to be gone. If I'm dreaming, I'm going to know that I'm dreaming because that mirror will be gone. So I walk in and I immediately turn around and walk back out, and the mirror and the whole bank of sinks was just gone. And it was so shocking and astonishing. That was the thing that knocked me out, and I became awake and was out of the whole thing. But it was, again, proof to me that we can then begin to control these things. And since we can, it's a great jumping off point for something called astral projection or astral travel. And it gives us an opportunity for conscious visitations. So once you become lucid in your dream and you're starting to control it, you can ask for access to your loved ones. You can ask for access to your guides. Things like that then become possible. And Gary, if you don't mind, you have a great, we'll call it, maybe started as a lucid dream, but definitely became a projection, an astral projection
It
story.
did.
Do you
And it was
mind
very,
sharing that?
yeah, sure. It was very evidential because, well, this was 30 years ago, September 6th of 1995. And at the time, I worked on the camp where I ended up managing for 28 years. But at the time, I worked under somebody else, and he and his family lived on the property as well, which is a camp and retreat center in the Sierra Mountains. At any rate, his daughter, 16 years old, went to school in San Joaquin Valley. So she drove down, and it was her first day of her senior year. So she left for school. We did our day's work. I went home. He went home. We both lived on the property, but separate ends. And that night, when I went to bed, I began to have what they call the vibrational state, which is common in out of body experiences because it actually, you feel like you're vibrating. I've often thought of it like a train going by. Your whole body's moving. So I'm seeing flecks of gold and I'm lifting out of my body. And I suddenly see his daughter, we had watched drive out to school that morning, in at the time I would say a lower astral plane and very confused. Um, and I walked into a building that was pointed out to me, and she was sitting there on the floor and she said, "Hi, what are you doing here?" And I said, "I can't stay, but I want you to know you're loved." I gave her a hug, which I was later told by a medium that helped her make her transition fully because she hadn't really done so. It was a rather sudden accident she had had the morning of the 6th. So here we are, the day of the 7th. My employer comes over, her father, and we begin our day's work, and I'm noticing concern on his face. And I said, "What's the matter?" And he said, "Well, we can't find Melina." Well, I knew immediately she was on the other side. And sure enough, her car on the morning of the 6th had gone off the highway and she had gone through the windshield, not wearing a seatbelt. And it was hidden, the wreckage was hidden from the public. So that was really, it wasn't until they flew a helicopter midday that they found the wreckage. So that was very evidential because I never dreamed of her since or before. But I wanted to say something about the lucid dream. It is a good stepping off point for a full out of body experience. And some of the methods recommended are focus on your hands. focus on the ground, the sand, the granules of dirt. And by doing that, it will lead you into a full out of body experience from a lucid dream that you're dreaming in. So, but you're a creator in that space. And just as we are here, it's just more of a consensus thing, on the earth plane. But in that space, you're the orchestrator. Um, so it reflects what's in your consciousness. Would you agree?
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I just love that story because it is such a validating experience for the idea that first we're not our body, right?
Right.
And that our brain is not even the source of our consciousness. And that's the really important thing. We're really having a lot of science begin to understand better the fact that consciousness is not something that science yet, especially not from a materialist standpoint, can put their finger on. But what they learned very recently about lucid dreaming is that it's not the same as our regular dream states. It lights up different parts of the brain, and it has different uh, dominant wave patterns associated with it. So while they generally have always thought that theta brain waves were the dominant dream state, and it is for regular dreaming, for REM dreaming, and even those non-REM theta dream states, they found out that lucid dreaming, the brain shifts predominantly into beta, which is our normal waking conscious awareness state, and gamma, which is a high vibrational state. It's the state that Buddhist monks who are, kind of the mega meditators, right? They get into gamma. It's the dominant state that Joe Dispenza, if you're familiar with him at all, helps people learn to get into, where they have incredible experiences and incredible healing experiences in that state. And so the fact that lucid dreaming is similar to that is not surprising to me at all. They even say that it's the same type of brain states that you get into on psychedelic drugs, only there's no drugs involved, no drugs needed. So if anybody's interested in looking at that, it was Popular Mechanics. It came out in end of April, was the time frame for that article. Feel free to take a look at it. It's really interesting. Now, I do want to still talk a little bit about dreams, just normal, everyday, regular dreams, because our loved ones can also communicate to us through what we would consider a more standard dream. And so, in a way, it can even be as effective as a visitation, what we would call a lucid visitation. The symbolism in dreams, though, is usually very archetypal in nature. And so, it can be like in this case, I happen to put a horse on this slide because um, a horse has a very universal archetypal meaning. It can mean um, travel because, at least at one time, we used horses almost predominantly for travel. It can mean freedom and uh, strength because we associate these big, strong animals with, running in herds across vast prairies. And, we all kind of love that imagery. It can represent the physical body. It can, because it's the vehicle that we use, much like a car can represent the physical body or a house can represent the physical body. It's the thing that consciousness resides in. So it's really good to start to come up with ways to remember your dreams, because even in the most, kind of normal dream function that we have on a regular every night kind of condition, we can still get communication. but it's largely going to be metaphorical or symbolic in nature. So, what are some things that we can do to request or initiate a dream visit? And there's two kind of things that I look at. One is basically the intention to have one, the intention to be visited by a loved one in the dream state. And then the other thing we'll talk about is a little bit of biohacking to maybe also up the chance for that just a little bit. But to me, the most important thing is the intention setting. And there's lots of things that we can do to set a strong intention. The first one is to just ask. Ask your loved ones to visit you in a dream. And even better, you can do it mentally, but even better than doing it mentally, say it out loud. The human voice is a vibration creating machine, right? We hear each other because our voices create vibration and we communicate in that way. And so asking out loud just gives a little extra oomph to the intention, both for you and for your loved one. And then document your dreams as best you can. Document your dreams, ideally every morning or every night when you wake up right after having a dream. If you can keep a notepad by your bedside with pen to jot down anything you remember. Initially, you might not remember much. When I'm not actively documenting dreams, I don't remember much, and I don't remember it for long if I remember anything. You know, I can get up realizing I was just having a dream, and I kind of have a grasp of what it was. And I can, 5 minutes later, I have no idea what I was dreaming. Like, it doesn't take any time at all for me to completely lose whatever that dream was. But as you actively begin to document what you do remember, even if it's just the feeling of it, you know, if you don't remember any details, but you're like, but I felt excited, or I felt loved, or I felt afraid, whatever it happens to be, even that is enough to help you the next night remember a little bit more, and the next night a little bit more. And you'll find that you start to remember big chunks of your dreams. I had one lady the last time I taught this class say she remembers all her dreams, and she always has. That's amazing, but it's not true for most of us. Certainly not true for me. But whenever I start to place my focus in that way and towards my dreams and document, I remember more and more and more. Another thing to do is to just actively work on your own vibrational state. And my favorite way to do it, and there's a lot of people that really hate meditating, but my favorite way to do that is to meditate daily, if possible, or something that people who practice mediumship call sitting in the power, which is basically just sitting in a state to raise your personal vibration. There are many, many ways to meditate, and maybe we'll do another class in the future on different forms of meditation, because the same type of meditation doesn't work for everybody. I like to sit in a dim or darkened room, but there's some people that's like, I just can't do that. There's walking meditations and lots of other things that you can do that can serve the same purpose. Another thing you can do is you can create intention setting rituals or objects. Are these absolutely necessary? No, they're not. Rituals are about solidifying your intention. That's all they are. A crystal around your neck, like I have, is not going to suddenly cause you to have a lucid dream just because you wore it. But if my intention is that this crystal is going to help me to remember my dreams, and the act of putting it on is going to solidify that intention, then yeah, it can help. It can absolutely help. So you could make a dream catcher. like the Native Americans have been known to do. And they've got a whole culture around the meanings behind that. And it's lovely if you also research and understand that culture. But even if you don't, it's just the creation of an object that helps set an intention. It's also good to have a consistent sleep schedule. Um, I, for the last couple of years, have had to take a medication at night that to help me sleep, but I'm finally coming off of it. And I'm finally starting to remember my dreams better again because I don't need it as much anymore. But I had a time frame where I was not getting good sleep. And for my health, I needed to sleep at night. So I had a medication that assisted with that. I am so happy to not be needing it now at this stage in my life because I was missing my dreams. I was only holding on to the ones after the medication had worn off, which was about 4 o'clock in the morning on. Now I'm retaining a little bit more of my earlier dream states, but it is important to have a consistent sleep schedule. Don't for both your health as well as the ability to become aware of your different brain states through the sleep cycles. The other thing is be really patient. These things don't happen every day. They're not even something that happens weekly. I mean, and I have some ideas around this. Whether or not my perspective is the absolute whole truth, I don't know. But it seems there's a certain amount of energy required on the part of our loved ones in order to show up in true full-on dream visitations. And so, they don't happen every day, but they can happen even after your loved one has been gone for years and years and years. It's not like they can't still show up for you either when it's important, when you're in need, when you ask, when you put in the effort and the intention. They can and they will show up. But if you haven't been doing things to help retain some of these states, maybe they're visiting you almost every night, but you're just not aware of it. We do, at the very least, rise out of our bodies at an astral body level every night. And so people who do regular astral projection, when they look at sleeping people, they see that their astral bodies are often just hovering above the physical body. And we all do it. We all get out, but we don't retain memory. The vast majority of the time, we don't retain memory. So what we're looking to do is to retain memory. And then, of course, when you do have a dream visitation, or even a dream that has signs or symbols, tell them thank you. Oh, and I've got big chills when I say this. This is really important. Tell them thank you, and please do it again. They need validation just like we do, right? We like to have validation, around the things that we're doing, and they do as well. If
There are people too. There are people
they are
too.
people too, yes. And if they keep trying to get to you over and over and over again, and you don't recognize it, they'll eventually give up, just like you would, right? And so it's really, really important to say thank you and, hey, do that again sometime. All right. And then I suspect most of the people here have probably had a dream visitation. And in a little bit, we're almost through with this portion of the class. In a little bit, I want you guys to tell me, to share, if you like, any dream visitations you feel like you've had, or if you have questions, I'll also try to answer to them to the best of my ability. But think about things that we've talked about, and what was it like? How did you feel during the dream? How did you feel after you woke up? I mean, I've generally been very excited about the experience when I've woken up. Was there a message, especially if it's early after someone's passing? There's so often a message attached, just like I've had with my son. He came to me twice with very specific, important messages. I think they were both important for me as well as for him. How long did it last? Like I said, they're notoriously brief, but if it happens to be coming through in a dream that's kind of a normal REM state dream that's more symbolic in nature, then those can have more length to them. But the ones that are the very vivid, visceral dream visitations, those typically are short, short, short. And then, of course, how vividly do you remember it? And has it ever left you? All right, so a couple of quick resources that I've made for you guys is I did create a guided meditation that you might like to use on YouTube. It's on my personal YouTube page, which I'll give you the link. This first one is the link for that, and these will be in the recording for this, so you can refer back to them later. And then the other thing that I gave you is gamma, beta, and theta tones that are just tones that you can listen to while you're meditating or while you're going to sleep. And I did all three of these tones because I'm still playing with them. And originally, I focused mostly on theta because I know that theta is the primary brainwave for REM sleep, as well as that non-REM earlier stage that we go through where we also dream. And so I've spent a lot of time listening to theta, but now that we have this information also about gamma and beta being these very dominant brainwaves for lucid dreaming, I'm going to spend some more time with those. I have listened to them in the past during meditations and things, but I have spent most of my time with theta. And it's also associated with mediumship. Mediums get into theta when they're working. And theta and all of the stuff that lights up is back here. You'll find mediums are often doing this while they're, at least I do. I can feel the information come in right here. And so it's also the dominant brainwave when we're dreaming and mediumship. That was always interesting to me. So I've spent a lot of time with that particular tone. But gamma and beta are big part of lucid dreaming. And I've only learned that in the last 2 weeks. So listen to those as well. One of the fun things you can try to do is if you can play 2 of these tones at the same time, these are YouTube sources. If you can get 2 pages open at the same time, like you can on a computer, so maybe on a tablet or something like that, you can play 2 of these tones together. And the interesting about that is because they interfere with each other, you get this kind of wom, 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 wom thing that happens. It's kind of similar to if you've ever been in a sound bath where somebody's using singing bowls that are set to different hertz or different frequencies. You'll get that same wom, 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 wom kind of a sound. And we know that that creates some brain entrainment. So I'm going to continue to play with those things, and I'm just providing it here as a possibility of something you might want to play with. But these are the what's the word I want to say? The biohacking tools that I was talking about. And again, our brain is the receiver. It's a radio for consciousness. So this is about tuning the radio, if that makes sense. And then one last thing, if any of you want to share your story on the Thinning Veil Project, which I have quite a few videos up for right now, but if you would like to share a story of connection with your loved one from across the veil, it's time for me to start producing some more of those videos again. If you want to see any of the ones that I've already produced, again, you can go to my YouTube channel at Sally Taylor, Psy Medium. It's PSY Medium. And see some of the ones that other people have done. And if you're interested in doing the same, please contact me. You all have my email address because you got it with the link. And let me know if you'd like to share a story.